the West Basement Water Policy and Legislation Committee for February 22nd, 2024. I call the committee meeting to order. Mr. General Manager, do we have a quorum?
Madam Chair, I will be performing roll call, but before I do so, I'd like to read a statement or an announcement. Since a quorum of the committee and the board are not present within the jurisdictional boundary of the district, which was the requirement of the Brown Act, the meetings will move forward as informational meetings only, and no action will be taken. And Madam Chair, that would be fine because the only items on the agenda are in fact informational. So with that, I'm going to read through a roll call. Director Don Deere. Here. Chairwoman Gloria Gray.
Here.
Director Scott Houston. Director Harold Williams. Here. Director Desi Alvarez. Madam Chair, for the reasons I stated earlier, there is not in fact a quorum, but we can move forward with the informational items.
Thank you very much. We will continue. Is there any member of the public who wished to speak?
Madam Chair, we did not receive any requests for public comment, though this meeting is being held both in person and virtually. If there are any members of the public that would like to make public comment, please indicate so now by raising your virtual hand. Madam Chair, I do not see a request for public comment.
Thank you. Could you go to the next item, please?
Madam Chair, staff has no presentations today per item 4 on the agenda, and per item 5, we have no action calendar items, which would now bring us to item 6 and 6A. And this item is our quarterly Safe Clean Water Program update. And this does begin on packet page 3. And for this presentation, we have Matt Bay, our Manager of Water Policy and Resources Development.
Thank you, EJ.
Matt, thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Gray and directors. I'll be starting on page 3 of the agenda packet. As EJ mentioned, this is our quarterly report for the Safe Clean Water Program, which is LA County's stormwater program. I'll provide some updates on the program from the last few months and also share some upcoming items of interest. You can always find more information about the Safe Clean Water meetings and projects and other details at their website, www.safecleanwaterla.org. And as a reminder, West Basin sits on the steering committees of both the Central and the South Santa Monica Bay WASPs, we call them. So I'll start off with Central Santa Monica Bay, which includes the northern parts of our service area, mostly Division 4, with a small part of Division 2. So in December, the committee received presentations on 3 scientific studies that were submitted for funding consideration this year. The proposals included best management practices for stormwater dry well capacity, a street sweeping study, and pollutant source characterization. I know that Director Williams, you had expressed previous interest in the street sweeping study, and that presentation has been provided as a handout today and is also being made available through our chat. Thank you. The same 3 studies were also presented to the South Santa Monica Bay Committee in January. In January, one infrastructure program project was presented to the committee. That was the Baldwin Vista Green Streets project, which is asking for about $9 million over a 5-year period. The project, which falls just outside the boundaries of Director Gray's division of our service area, would capture about 100 acre-feet per year from a 135-acre area, construct 47 dry wells, plant 40 street trees, and include various displays and bioswales. In February, the committee received presentations on 2 project modification requests, which are prior approved projects that have undergone some change in scope, be it funding or the project itself. These modifications will be considered by the committee against any new projects or studies that would come through this year. Those 2 project Modifications were MacArthur Lake Rehab Project and the Bayona Creek TMDL project. Both projects cite cost inflation as a primary reason for the modification. That seems to be a very common thing that they're seeing with this program. LA County has a lot of cost inflation issues that they're experiencing, as we all are. And that was the reason for the modification request. In March, the committee is expected to begin considering funding recommendations for the next fiscal year's what we call the Stormwater Investment Program, or SIP. That's where we actually allocate funding to current projects, future projects, past projects. And then those recommended actions or budget would then go up the chain, eventually making its way to the LA County Board of Supervisors for final approval later this year. I'll switch now to the South Santa Monica Bay Committee, which includes the majority of our service area. So that includes divisions 1, 2, 3, 5, and a small part of 4. The October and November meetings were canceled, but in December, we received presentations on 2 proposed infrastructure projects, one being the Torrance Airport Stormwater Basin Project, and the other being the Dominguez Channel Parkway Best Management Practices Project. We also received a presentation on what's called a proposed technical resources program, which was the Gardena Willows Wetland Project in Director Deere's division. The Torrance Airport project is seeking about $19 million over the next 5 years. The project location is not included in a disadvantaged community, which hurts its score, but it would provide water quality benefits to Machado Lake, which is located in a disadvantaged community. It includes about 132 acre-feet per year of water supply benefits for recycling and reuse to LA County Sanitation District, and potentially down the line with the Pure Water Facility. The Dominguez Channel BMP project is another City of Torrance project requesting $5 million to build dry wells, add infiltration and percolation basins, and other capture features aimed at improving water quality at the Dominguez Channel and the Torrance Lateral. It includes a 4,300 acre capture area, with the majority of the watersheds being in disadvantaged communities. It received a lower score than the Torrance Airport project from the scoring committee, primarily due to having no water supply benefits. And then finally, the Gardena Willows Wetland Technical Resources Project is located in a disadvantaged community in the city of Gardena, and they're requesting $300,000 to improve the water quality of the stormwater and non-stormwater runoff that drains into the Dominguez Channel. This project encompasses about 115 acres of capture. It'll improve runoff quality into the wetlands and will help with meeting water quality compliance. It'll also assist with vector control and removal of invasive species with native plants. It would increase public access to this natural open space and would improve educational signage and programming. This is a project that West Basin staff is interested in exploring further for potential partnership opportunities independent of the Safe Clean Water program. These projects will all be considered by committee members in the coming months. The January meeting included consideration of the 3 scientific studies that I've already mentioned. And then yesterday we had our meeting in South Santa Monica Bay, which included some peer review summaries of those scientific studies and also 2 additional project modification requests in our service area. So one last update on this program is that Gilda Bay is hosting a tour of the Edward C. Little Water Recycling Facility this coming Saturday. And we are expecting attendees from both watershed area steering committees, in addition to others that would attend from Gilda Bay's interest list. I believe President Alvarez will be providing a welcome to that group, and West Basin staff will be on hand to provide the tour of this facility. That concludes my Safe Clean Water quarterly update. I'm happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Matt. Very good report. Are there any questions, Director Deere or Director Williams?
No, thank you.
I have no questions, but I'd like to make a comment that I'm from the South Bay here, kind of grew up here. And every time I hear about an improvement in the South Bay area, I get very excited. Because I also was a public works director for the city of Gardena for a short period of time, just before I retired. And the Willows is one of the first projects I worked on when I went to Gardena, and I'm very, very, very excited and happy to hear the possibility of improvements there. Because if you've ever been in the Willows, it's like you've gone to another world. There's no way you feel like you're in an urban environment. It's an exciting place, and I know that Director Deere is happy about it, because it was almost, I think they were thinking about naming it after you. Is that correct?
Park.
The park. Oh, okay. That was the entrance to the Willows. Would have been entrance, but would be through the, anyway. Didn't happen. But we're still excited about it, nevertheless. Thank you.
Director Williams, if I could add to that, one of the things that we should also point out is that West Basin's role and activity with the watershed area steering committees, as well as our role, Tammy serves and helps out with the integrated regional water management. That gives us a seat at the table, and we're on the front lines of all of these local improvements and projects. And it allows us to hear the project proponents talk about their vision, what they want to do. And then, of course, our activity and our engagement with our community comes from Matt and Tammy working with each of those project proponents to say, well, what can West Basin do to help you implement that project? Are there any opportunities to integrate water conservation fixtures or water savings? And that's where you really see that give and take and that integration between West Basin and the communities that we serve.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. That's all I have.
Madam
All
Chair,
right,
shall I
thank you,
introduce the next item?
Yes, please. Thank you for the comments from Director Williams and Deere and so forth. All right, you can go to the next item, please.
Yes, Madam Chair. The next item is item 6B. It's California Department of Water Resources, Proposition 1, Round 2, Integrated Regional Water Management Grant Agreement for the Harbor South Bay Project. And for this presentation, we have Tammy Hurley-High, and this item does begin on packet page 5.
Thank you, Jay. Good afternoon, committee members. So this item is being brought to you today to provide an update on the grant proposal that was submitted back in 2022 to the California Department of Water Resources. And the Greater Los Angeles Integrated Regional Water Management Group, we refer to as IRWIM, they submitted the grant application to DWR requesting funding for 17 projects under Proposition 1, Round 2. Which DWR has approved as presented in the grant application, all of the projects. So that application totaled $20.3 million, and it included West Basin's Harbor South Bay project. The project would extend recycled water lateral to 4 different site locations in the cities of Carson and Gardena. So DWR has now completed the agreement for inclusion of all local project sponsors. It took them a while, but now they are finished. And the Los Angeles County Flood Control District is the grant administrator. They have prepared a memorandum of understanding between DWR, the county, and each local project sponsor, which incorporates DWR's agreement. So for the Harbor South Bay project, the state funding will help to offset the project cost and leverage the federal funding of $3.79 million that West Basin has already secured from the Army Corps of Engineers. Regarding West Basin cost share for the DWR grant, DWR has approved waiving 100% of our local cost share, because this project will demonstrate benefits in the areas that are considered economically distressed. And in these areas, they will reduce demand on imported water, increase water supply reliability, and with the use of recycled water, maintain open green space for recreational activities, and mitigate climate vulnerabilities. So we were really happy to see that DWR had waived 100% the cost share on that grant. So West Basin, since we will not be required to pay a cost share, that results in a cost savings of $650,000. Regarding the grant application fees, West Basin proportional share was $4,784.50. Regarding the grant administrative fees, the Los Angeles County Flood Control District, as I mentioned, will be the grant administrator. And all local project sponsors are required to contribute 4.5% of their, to contribute to the county's effort in managing all aspects of reporting the grant deliverables to DWR. So for West Basin, this amounts to a total of $58,500. That 4.5% administrative fee, $58,500 charged by the Los Angeles County Flood Control District, that would be taken from the $1.3 million grant that DWR has awarded to West Basin. As a bit of background, just as a reminder, that Harbor South Bay project would provide new recycled water pipeline to public schools and parks. The Carson lateral would provide 35 acre-feet a year of recycled water. That would be for irrigation services to Curtis Middle School and Mills Park. And the Gardena lateral would provide 24 acre-feet of recycled water for irrigation services to Pierre Middle School and Moss Buckeye Park. So that concludes my update on that report, and I would be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Madam Chair?
Is she connected to?
She is. And you would be the other director on the committee.
I'm sorry, I
Um,
had you on mute, I'm
nope.
sorry. I'm sorry. Are there any questions? I'm sorry. Any questions?
Nope, no,
If
thank
not-
you.
All right, thank you. If not, EJ, unless you have a comment, Tammy, you did a great job, very comprehensive, so we can move on if no other questions or comments. Sorry, I had you guys on mute, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This brings us to item 6C. It's an integrated regional water management, disadvantaged community and tribal involvement program update. And again, for this presentation, we have Tammy Hurley-High, our water policy and resources analyst too.
All right, thank you, Jay. Thank you, directors. So this item is to provide an update on the Disadvantaged Community Involvement Grant Program. We refer to as DACD in the acronym. And this grant program is nearing completion. Information about an upcoming summit to showcase the program is scheduled to happen next month. So I wanted to share that information with you. There is a flyer attached to the memo as well, with more information on the dates and location. Just as a bit of background reminder, this program received a grant from DWR's IRWIMP Proposition 1 funding a few years back. And a total of $9.8 million was awarded to the Greater Los Angeles Ventura Irwin area. That includes Greater Los Angeles County, Ventura County, and the Santa Clarita region. This was to implement a disadvantaged community involvement program. So funding for this program enabled a large collaborative effort of community members in disadvantaged areas throughout these three regions. The Greater Los Angeles County region is densely developed, as you know, a total of 88 cities, as well as unincorporated Los Angeles County areas, approximately 40% residing in disadvantaged community census tracts. The Water Talks area, what evolved out of this program was Water Talks. And the communities within the West Basin service area includes several that are Gardena, North Harbor Gateway, Hawthorne, Inglewood, Lawndale, Lenox, Lomita, Southwest Carson, and the South Harbor Gateway, West Carson area. And through this program over the years, there have been several community and stakeholder workshops that convened in these areas. So as the Water Talk program further developed, it identified several areas of concern that some are included water supply, wastewater, climate, and drought impacts, along with other community-specific challenges that were involving habitat impact, recreational access, and stormwater and flooding issues. It's also important to note that the Water Talks program is recognized as an award-winning program, and they recently received an Equity and Justice Honorable Mention from the Southern California Association of Governments 2023 Sustainability Award. So as I mentioned, that flyer is included in the memo. This is the 2-day statewide summit. It's inviting the Department of Water Resources and IRWIC stakeholders across the state that will come and also join virtually. And as I mentioned, they will showcase this Water Talks program. They will share the successes, the lessons learned, and potential future funding opportunities as well. It will be held at the Los Angeles County Public Works headquarters that's located in Alhambra. So that concludes my update on that item as well. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tammy. Yes, directors, are there any questions, please?
There's none.
All right. EJ, the next item, please.
Yes, Madam Chair, that brings us to item 6D. It's our monthly state and federal legislative updates. And for this presentation, we have Matt Bay, our Manager of Water Policy and Resources Development.
Thank you, EJ. I'm now on page 156 of the agenda packet. And I'll begin with the state legislative update, which begins with the Neomela Pappas monthly report on page 158 of the packet. So late January signals the start of a very busy time for the state legislature. It's also been a time of some big changes in our state government. While last year we saw the election of a new speaker of the assembly and Assemblyman Robert Rivas, the Senate has also now formally transitioned to a new president pro tem, from San Diego's Tony Atkins to Northern California's Mike McGuire. One interesting note to point out is that both the speaker and president pro tem come from more suburban or even rural areas of the state, which is a switch from the previous leaders who both hailed from major Southern California metropolitan areas. We've talked before about the changes to the assembly leadership, but we also now know how the Senate leadership will change. A list of the new Senate Democratic leadership can be found on page 159 of the packet. However, none of the West Basin Senate delegation members are currently in this group, but here's a look at where our members do stand. Senator Ben Allen will chair the Environmental Quality Committee and will also serve on the Natural Resources and Water Committee. Senator Stephen Bradford will continue to chair the Energy, Utilities, and Communications Committee. And Senator Lola Smallwood Cuevas is on a number of budget and policy committees, but none appear to be water specific or related at this time. I also wanted to mention that Assembly Member Tina McKenna, who represents Inglewood, Hawthorne, Lawndale, and several unincorporated LA County areas, was recently elected the chair of the Los Angeles County delegation. There are 15 senators and 24 assembly members that belong to that. As we all know, this is an election year with races happening in both March and November this year. And this will definitely be an issue that we track throughout the year. But I did want to share an election overview that was put together recently. The 2024 legislative race briefing was provided as a handout and is also being uploaded to the meeting chat. I'm not going to go through it at this time, but it's something for the committee members to take a look at. It's a nice primer for some of the races to keep an eye on this year. Last month, we updated you on the governor's January budget proposal, and we mentioned that there was a discrepancy between the administration's deficit projections from independent analysts. So the governor's office had originally predicted $38 billion deficit, while the legislative analyst office had predicted $58 billion, so a difference of about $20 billion. And then just this week, there was more analysis done by the LAO that deficit number may grow even bigger to $73 billion due to a drop in expected revenues. This obviously has tangible and considerable impacts on the programs that are funded. And as I mentioned last month, one area where funds are being pulled back or delayed its on recycled water projects. I provided some additional information to the directors about this issue earlier this month. And it is an issue that Water Reuse, Aqua, and others are addressing. And that includes our staff. We're continuing to work with these coalitions to seek additional funding for recycled water, both in the state budget and then also to advocate for funding for water infrastructure and recycled water in the potential climate bond that would happen potentially later this year in November. There's additional budget summaries in the monthly report, but if there's any additional information that you want to know about, please let us know and we're happy to look that up. Another area for us to keep in mind is a group of tax and constitutional related amendments that are set to be on the November ballot. Again, NPA put together a nice little summary of that in their report, but there are 3 expected measures that will be considered by voters this fall. Amendment number 1 would make it easier to raise new taxes. This is supported by a large number of cities, special districts, and industry associations. And then opposition to this measure includes taxpayer advocates, chambers of commerce, business councils, and affordable housing interests, among others. Amendment 13 would make it more difficult to place restrictions on raising new taxes. This measure is sponsored by labor unions such as SEIU, California School Employees Association, and then other supporters include Aqua, CMUA, very long list of cities and local agencies and others. Opposition is very similar to the above, with taxpayers associations, chambers, and business councils being opposed to it. The third, I guess, and final initiative is sponsored by the California Business Roundtable that would make it more difficult to raise new taxes. The measure is called the Tax Protection and Government Accountability Act. For support and opposition, basically just swap the previous ones from what you heard. So cities and local agencies are opposed to this measure, with business interests being in support. As you might have inferred, some of these measures are on opposite sides of the spectrum in terms of their impact on local agencies. So this will continue to be an issue that gains more exposure as we lead up to the November ballot. As I mentioned earlier, there continues to be a push from the water industry on getting a climate bond onto the November ballot. Aqua is asking for $7.85 billion for various water needs, while Water Reuse is asking for $1.8 billion for water recycling specifically, with some of that funding being allocated for existing facilities like West Basin. This is something that we've been advocating for and will continue to work with Water Reuse and seeing get put into the final version of the bond. At this time, this issue has not gained too much traction yet, but if and when it takes off, which probably will be this summer, it should be a major point of negotiations for the legislature, water interests, and environmental interests. A coalition of environmental interests have also submitted their own priorities for a climate bond. So they submitted a letter, which would be $10 billion total for the climate bond, and that would include $3 billion for safe drinking water and flood protection. And of that, $450 million would go toward water recycling funding that leverages the Clean Water Safe Revolving Loan Fund. A copy of this letter was provided as a handout to directors and should be available in the chat. Before I get into some bill updates, I wanted to touch on our upcoming Sacramento lobbying visit, which will take place on March 5th and 6th. So staff has been working with NPA very closely to put together a full agenda and background information ahead of the trip. I believe that information has been shared with the directors, but we'll continue to make adjustments to the agenda and send them your way as more information comes in from the remaining offices that have not yet confirmed appointments with us. Staff's also working with the general manager to finalize updates to the legislative briefing book, which we bring with us to our meetings in both Sacramento and Washington, D.C. The Legislator of the Year awards that we'll be giving out to Senator Allen and Senator Caballero are also being shipped up to NPA's office this week and will be provided to each office ahead of our meetings. The majority of the meetings will take place on Tuesday, March 5th, with right now there only being one meeting currently set for the afternoon of Wednesday, March 6th. I know that the directors that are planning to attend the trip are working out your travel details with our board secretary. But if you have any questions or suggestions for staff, over the next 2 weeks, please don't hesitate to let us know. Moving now into legislation, the deadline to introduce new bills was last week, February 16th. giving the Senate and Assembly about a month to begin hearing bills in their policy and fiscal committees before their 10-day spring recess, which begins on March 21st. We're still parsing through all of the new bills with potential impact on our organization or the water industry at large. My intent is for staff to begin bringing potential bills to you, to the committee, with position recommendations as early as next month. Now that we have the board adopted policy principles and legislative priorities in place, it's our goal to move swiftly on any legislation that we see as a priority. Aqua is sponsoring a bill, AB 2257, that would provide water agencies with some additional protection and or tools when it comes to Prop 218 issues that come up when ratepayers bring legal action against new rates. While West Basin is not required to go through the Prop 218 noticing process, we still see this as a potential bill for support, and we'll consider bringing it to the committee next month. AB 3121 is another bill by Assemblymember Greg Hart that would push out compliance dates for retail water providers relating to the pending conservation regulations. This has been a big pain point for local agencies, and extending the compliance dates by an additional year, again, could be a good support opportunity for our board to consider that would benefit all of our retailers. Another related proposal is SB 1110 by Senator Angelique Ashby, and that would require the State Water Board to consider lower cost actions that water suppliers have taken to help retailers achieve their water use objectives. This would be potentially reflected in any conservation order that the state board issues to a specific retail water supplier. Again, this is another proposal that could help our retailers, and so it is something that we may want to consider supporting on their behalf as early as next month. With all the bills now being introduced, I will continue to work with the general manager and NPA to put together a priority bills list that we'll start working from next month. With that said, please feel free to look through the attached bill report that starts on page 162, and please let staff know if there's anything you want us to take a closer look at. Finally, I believe the board has already been briefed on this, but I wanted to reiterate that we have great opportunity in April when the Assembly Speaker, Robert Rivas, is tentatively scheduled to visit us at our ECL facility. Staff will pick up where we kind of left off last month to put together a great and welcoming experience for the speaker. That concludes my state report. Are there any questions before I move over to the federal update?
Hey, thank you, Matt. Are there any questions? I don't hear any,
None
Matt.
for me right now.
Okay, then I will move on. Chair Gray.
Thank you. Yes, please.
All right. I'm now on page 172 of the agenda packet, where you can read the Vanscoy Associates monthly report. This is a bit briefer update on the federal side, but the federal government continues to operate under two separate temporary funding measures, which are known as continuing resolutions. The first one, which includes energy and water programs, is set to expire March 1st, with the second one, which includes EPA programs, ending on March 8th. The good news is Congress appears to be getting closer to agreeing on funding amounts for the 12 distinct appropriations bills, and they will hopefully be passing something soon that removes the need for any additional continuing resolutions. Last month, Congresswoman Grace Napolitano, who is set to retire at the end of this year, she introduced new water legislation called the Priority for Water Supply and Conservation Act, which has a bill number of HR 7065. The bill would add water supply and water conservation as a primary mission of the U.S. Army Corps, which currently has existing mission areas of navigation, flood protection, and ecosystem restoration. So this would be a new priority area for them. It would authorize the Army Corps to give equal priority to water resources development measures, including investigating opportunities to add water supply storage, development of drought contingency plans, and advancing water conservation and water reuse practices at existing water resources projects. Staff believes this is a bill worth considering for a support position, as it has the potential to bring additional priority and importance to the types of projects and programs that we oversee here at West Basin. So I do plan to bring this legislation to the committee next month with a recommended support position for the board. And the timing would be good if we're able to do that, as we do plan to visit with Congresswoman Napolitano during our Washington, D.C. trip in April. Other legislation that's expected to be introduced this month is Senator Padilla's Low-Income Household Water Assistance Program. This is legislation the board took a support position on last month. And I just heard yesterday that it's going to be next week when that bill gets officially introduced. We were also given a list of supporters of that bill, the full list. So I will be sending that out to the general manager and the board secretary to share with the board shortly. And then related to this bill, I also wanted to mention that our department and Public Information Education Department are continuing to work together to make a final push for our retailers and communities to utilize the existing water assistance program, which is set to expire at the end of March. Water policy staff has provided some data information to the board earlier this month about LA County's participation in the program thus far, while PI has been putting out some social media encouraging our eligible communities to apply to the program. Finally, another federal bill of interest passed the House earlier this month. HR 4385 is known as the Drought Preparedness Act. The bill is sponsored by representatives from Colorado, Arizona, and Nevada. This bill extends the authorization date of the Bureau's drought response program to fiscal year 2028. This program allows the Bureau to provide assistance to states, tribes, and local governments for drought planning and mitigation activities. The program has been around for nearly 20 years, and the funding is set to run out this year unless this bill gets passed. So that would extend the sunset date and add new funding for those programs. Finally, just switching gears to the Colorado River, a new report from the Bureau of Reclamation was released recently about evaporation and evapotranspiration that occurs on the river, and that reduces the amount of surface water that makes its way through the lower parts of the river on the way to Mexico. Evaporation was a point of contention between the upper and lower basin states during their negotiations last year, with the upper basin states saying that California, Arizona, and Nevada need to take into account that evaporation that occurs on the lower Colorado River. The Bureau's report found that approximately 1.3 million acre feet of losses occur each year in the lower Colorado, with 2/3 of that happening from evaporation. It does remain to be seen how this report will impact future negotiations and discussions on the river. I guess one more thing is that staff did recently have a meeting with Pete Evich from Van Scoyoc Associates to discuss the agency's needs, potential future projects, and to learn about future funding sources for cybersecurity and energy management. We had a good meeting with him and other folks from our other departments. And so we're going to continue to look into opportunities to help fund some of those needs of the district. And then finally, I'll just mention that VSA has put together a draft list of meetings for our April Washington, D.C. trip. Invitations haven't started going out to the offices quite yet, but that should start to happen early next month. In the meantime, staff will provide the board with a copy of the proposed meetings list, albeit without any specific meeting dates or times. And again, this trip will take place the week of April 15th. That concludes my prepared remarks. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Are there any questions? Director Dear Williams?
No.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Matt or EJ, I believe EJ sent out an email regarding, it was that the water assistance programs for the different cities, and you named a number of cities who had not inquired about it. Do you have any other status on that yet?
We had 3 cities that had not filed to participate in the low-income household.
Right.
I believe it was Inglewood,
Lomita.
Amita,
Yeah. I think those
and
were-
El Segundo.
Yes, that's right.
Right.
Yeah. Chair Gray, staff is in the process of reaching out to those cities to see, if they have plans to do any outreach to their areas, and if not, then we're going to encourage them to do so here in the last month or so that they have to participate in the program. Some of them might not have much areas that are kind of qualified for these programs, like the city of Lomita, but I assume that city of Inglewood would be more likely to have some qualified areas. So for me, it's definitely prioritizing all of them, but I want to especially reach out to Inglewood this week to see if they could put it out there to their residents because I know that they're more likely to be qualified for this type of assistance.
Matt, could you just briefly kind of tell me what the assistance is all about for the city?
I didn't quite catch the
Can you
question.
tell me what it actually, how it helps the cities? What kind of assistance does it give the city?
Okay. Yeah, so it's a program that basically allows residents who might be behind on their water or wastewater bills to apply for, I guess, basically forgiveness of those debts, of those charges. And so it's a direct benefit to the customers. The money flows through the state into the local agency, and then that program, or actually into the local sponsors. There's several local sponsors that take the money from the state and then work with the customers directly to help them with whatever amount of money that they might owe on their past due bills.
Right. And do you guys reach out to the public works director in the cities? Is that who you reach out to, or the city manager?
I'm trying to figure out who I want to reach out. Yeah, I have a couple contacts at the city of Inglewood that I plan on reaching out to, but I want to make sure that it does get to the correct department. So I don't know if they have a community housing department there. I want to look and see who's the best. I might start with the city manager's office just so that they can point me to the right direction.
Right. I think the public works director position is vacant, but there's an assistant general manager over public works, and of course there's a city manager in all the cities, I'm sure. There is a community housing person too, but if you have an issue, let me know, because that, and I think all of us are concerned about any opportunities for constituents to help with assistance on their water bill or waste bill. So please let me know if there's an issue in the city that's in my district. Please let me know, and I can certainly make sure that the right person is contacted.
Thank you, Chair Gray. I appreciate that offer. And yes, I think you're probably alluding to Louis Atwell, who's the Public
Yes.
Works and Assistant City Manager there. So yes,
Yeah.
we'll definitely start there, and we'll let you know if we need any additional help.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you, Matt. Any other comments or whatever regarding this? Hearing none, Matt, can you go to the EJ? I'm sorry, can you go to the next item? But thank you, Matt. Did you finish your report?
Yes, ma'am, I'm done.
All right, thank you so much. Very good report. EJ?
Yes, Madam Chair, the next item we have is item 6E. It's our monthly Metropolitan Water District update. And for this presentation, we have Tammy Hurley-High, our Water Policy and Resources Analyst too.
Thank you.
Good afternoon again. So this Metropolitan report summarizes our updates on recent activities last month. Please feel free to ask any questions and provide comments you have at any time. And this information begins on page 178 of the committee packet. So first off, for the Pure Water Southern California project, last month, Metropolitan staff prepared a cost estimate for the Pure Water program. And the estimate represents costs for updated costs that would include the advanced water purification facility, the conveyance facilities, upsizing pipeline to accommodate flows from LADWP's Operation NEC project as well. This program is much better defined now compared to the conceptual program and the cost estimates that were released back in 2018. And mainly the costs have increased due to inflation and supply chain issues. There are additional costs for major treatment processes, facilities, capacity, direct potable reuse regulation, property acquisition, and Build America, Buy America requirements that are set forth under the federal grant requirement. On page 179 is a table that is included in the memo that summarizes the project cost for phase 1 of Pure Water. And this shows a total cost estimate of $6.3 million. So any significant facility refinements after the time frame that we're in now They will be captured in a future cost estimate, and that will be prepared towards the end of the environmental planning phase. The draft EIR will be available late this year in 2024, and the final EIR certification will be considered by the board in 2025. And to access a copy of the full report, which is about 239 pages long, there's a web link provided in the memo as well. So moving on to the Climate Adaptation Master Plan for Water, also referred to as CAMP. Metropolitan has been developing a Climate Adaptation Master Plan for Water, which has been a collaborative process that began last year in February 2023. And since then, there's been a lot of work that has been done in this effort. And Metropolitan staff has been working with committee members each month. Excuse me, as of recently, Metropolitan established a task force comprised of member agency managers and board members. And the overall focus is on climate vulnerabilities that affect water supply with an effort to develop a master plan. So that master plan will incorporate several areas that include climate and growth scenarios, time-bound targets, a framework for climate decision-making, policies, initiatives, and partnerships, which would lead up to a business model and funding strategies. So this effort is building upon what Metropolitan has already done with respect to their integrated resources plan, or we also refer to as the IRP. And some of the recent significant activities on this Camp for Water process have included a few areas. The first meeting of the task force members took place in November. This task force will contribute toward developing the master plan with evaluative criteria for decision-making framework. In December 2023, Metropolitan staff hosted an environmental listening session on Camp for Water to discuss the draft evaluative criteria. In January 2024, the task force reviews the climate decision-making framework, which includes time-bound targets. The time-bound targets would work in combination with the evaluative criteria to inform decision-making surrounding investment decisions. And then over the past few months, Metropolitan has held several panels on affordability. Their Sustainability, Resiliency, and Innovation Office partnered with the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office. They presented a series of panels bringing together experts from the water industry and utility industry for their resources and expertise. The panel series was organized to discuss affordability, to inform the Camp for Water development process on policy recommendations to help guide the decision-making framework. So in summary, a year one report for all the work that's been done so far is anticipated to be completed by April in a couple of months. And then the master plan that will require further development, and that is anticipated to be ready for the board consideration to adopt towards the end of this calendar year in 2024. And then, so moving on for the annual progress report to the California State Legislature. So Metropolitan prepares a report on their achievements in conservation, recycling, and groundwater recharge. Each year, they are required to submit this report to the state legislature. And last month, they held a public hearing during the One Water and Stewardship Committee. The board reviewed the report and the region's achievements that are all outlined in that report. It was submitted by the February 1st deadline. And so for more information on that report, a link has been provided in the committee packet, and that can be found on page 30. And moving along to assess valuations, on December 28th, the San Diego Local Agency Formation Commission, they finalized the de-annexation of Fallbrook Public Utilities from San Diego County Water Authority and annexation to Eastern Service Area. So Fallbrook is now part of Eastern Municipal Water District. And as a result, the assessed valuation for both San Diego and Eastern have been updated. That has become effective as of January 9th, 2024. So Fallbrook service area assessed valuation does minimally impact San Diego's and Eastern's assessed valuation percentage. However, it does not impact any director entitlement. It's also important to note that this percentage does not change for any other member agency either. So the updated information for San Diego and Eastern are shown in the memo, and then a full detailed list for assessed valuation for all member agencies is included under attachment A of the memo. So moving along for board meeting actions. Also included in this report is a summary of action items from the January meeting, along with a copy of the vote results and the draft agenda for the February board. So last week, they had their meetings in February, all the committee meetings and the board meeting. On Monday, the finance committee, during that meeting, staff presented the proposed biannual budget and rates for fiscal years 24-25 and 25-26. This is a very important item, and if it's okay, I can provide a brief update. It's really not included in the report, but I can just kind of summarize the overall, high-level view of what they're looking at. So in the report, Metropolitan, is that okay?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So in their report, Metropolitan has identified a cost reduction, and they have worked to lower the proposed budget and costs that are needed. The proposed rate increases are 13% for calendar year 2025 and 8% for 2026. It's important to note that Metropolitan staff also provided 3 different alternatives for the board to consider. Those include an additional rate increase in July 2024. That would be 7%. And then January 2025 would be 7%. And then January 2026 would be 7%. The second option was to increase the assessed valuation property tax rate. That would basically double the current rate from 0.0035% to 0.007%. The third would be to reduce a conservation program for a period of 3 years. And that would reduce the rate impact by about 1% over the biennium. So I'm happy to report that we will have Metropolitan staff, Katano Cassin and her budget team to the next West Basin caucus meeting on Wednesday, March 6th. And so their team will provide information to our board as far as this proposed budget and rates. And, they can answer any questions that, we may have with it as well. This meeting last week, that was considered workshop number 1. Workshop number 2 is scheduled for next week, February 27th at 9:30 in the morning. Workshop number 3 is scheduled for Tuesday, March 12th. If they need a 4th workshop, they will schedule that for Tuesday, March 26th. And then the board will consider the budget and rates for adoption on April 9th, 2024. That was a mouthful. But other items, that were anticipated, there was an information item that was shared on the proposed supplemental water management program. They will bring this back for board consideration in March. Another item was an action item that was approved at the One Water and Stewardship Committee, and that was an approval to an adjustment to Metropolitan Member Agency Administrative Program to allow member agencies to use up to 50% of their allocated funds under the flexible non-documented water saving category. This is a great benefit for member agencies, including West Basin. So we are happy that that was passed. And then that concludes the summary update. There is a brief water supply update at the very end of the packet where we have the charts. And so a lot of activity has been happening, as you know, storm-related activities. So the watershed conditions are improving. These numbers are already a little bit outdated, not by much. But it's important to note that Lake Oroville, they have began their releases into the Feather River last month. And this was to accommodate for runoff from storm conditions, while also And then on January 30th, DWR conducted the second manual snow survey. It indicated condition to be about 47% of average. And as a result, yesterday on February 21st, DWR increased the state water project allocation up to 15% from 10%. So the adjustment does not include results of the storms from the past couple of weeks. It is anticipated that DWR will revise the forecasted allocation in mid-March. So as I mentioned, the conditions are continue to improve, and so that's kind of good news on the water supply front. And that concludes my update. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions?
Madam Chair, do you have any questions?
Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello? Hello?
Can you hear us?
I can hear you now. Couldn't. Did Tammy complete a report?
Yes.
Okay, any questions?
None right now, thank you.
Okay, all right. Tammy, thank you so much for your report. EJ, next item.
Madam Chair, that concludes our information calendar. Brings us to closed session items, though we do not have any closed session items today.
Next item.
Director comments and future agenda items.
Okay, directors, Director Williams, any comments or future agenda item?
No, thank you.
Director Deere?
No, thanks.
All right. Okay, with that, then, thank you, staff and everyone, general manager and all the presenters this afternoon. Thank you very much for the information, your reports. And with that, this committee meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. Take care,
All right, thank you.
everyone. Bye-bye.